She looked at me with a quiet intensity and said, "I've been waiting years for this moment with you." In that instant, everything changed. The late afternoon sunlight filtered softly through the trees as I wandered down the familiar street, my mind drifting somewhere between past and present. It was one of those rare, quiet moments when the world seemed to slow, and I could almost hear my own heartbeat echoing in the gentle rustle of the leaves. Then, unexpectedly, she was there, standing just a few steps ahead, framed by the golden light, her silhouette both familiar and changed. She hadn't noticed me at first. Her posture was relaxed, yet there was an undeniable grace in the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence born from years lived fully, a depth I hadn't fully appreciated before. She was striking, yes, but not in the way that commands attention with youthful flashiness. Rather, it was a quiet radiance, like a calm sea reflecting the sunlight, steady, warm, and deeply inviting. When our eyes finally met, the world around me blurred for a moment. Her gaze held something I hadn't seen before, a mixture of recognition, hesitation, and something softer, longing, maybe, or hope. She smiled then, but it wasn't the easy smile of old friends reunited. It was layered, a touch wistful, as if it carried the weight of years spent waiting for this precise second. Our conversation began awkwardly, a clumsy dance of words and silences. She spoke gently, her voice low and steady, with a subtle tremor that betrayed a nervousness beneath the composed surface. I noticed the faint scent of jasmine in the air around her, delicate and calming, as if it was part of her very essence. There was a moment, brief and almost accidental, when our hands brushed as she handed me a small folded note. The contact was fleeting but electric, a whisper of skin on skin that sent a subtle shiver through me. Her fingers lingered just a fraction longer than necessary, and I caught the faint warmth of her touch, a gentle reassurance that spoke louder than any words could. For a moment, I found myself studying the lines that time had traced softly around her eyes and mouth. They told stories of laughter and sorrow, of resilience and quiet strength. And in that, I saw something beautiful, a reminder that attraction wasn't just about youthful looks or fleeting charm. It was about the depth beneath, the shared history unspoken but deeply felt. As she turned to leave, her back silhouetted against the fading light, I felt a tug of something I hadn't expected, a sudden ache of regret mixed with anticipation. The air between us seemed charged, thick with unspoken possibilities. I walked away slowly, the echo of her presence lingering in my senses, the warmth of her smile, the faint scent of jasmine, the soft brush of her fingers, all weaving into a memory I knew I'd carry with me. Somewhere beneath the surface, a quiet voice whispered that this was just the beginning. After that first unexpected encounter, something shifted, though nothing was said aloud. It was as if a delicate thread had been woven between us, fragile yet unbreakable, pulling us toward each other in quiet, unspoken ways. Days passed, and then weeks, each one marked by small moments that felt weighted with possibility. Our meetings were unplanned at first, a chance run-in at a local bookstore, a shared bench in the park where the early spring air was crisp but sweet with the scent of budding flowers. She smiled when she saw me, that same soft, knowing smile that held just a hint of something more. I noticed how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, a mature laughter, rich with experience and the kind of warmth only years can give. One afternoon, we found ourselves sitting across from each other at a small cafe, tucked away from the noise of the city. The table was cluttered with coffee cups and half-forgotten pastries, but the real world seemed to shrink around us, leaving only the quiet space we shared. She spoke with careful ease, but there was a hesitancy beneath her words, a gentle caution born from years of guarding her heart. I wanted to reach across the table and close the distance, but something held me back. Respect, maybe, or the unspoken understanding that this was a dance we had to learn step by step. Instead, I let my fingers rest lightly on the edge of the table, close enough to bridge the gap, yet careful not to overstep. The air between us was thick with pauses, those pregnant moments where words lingered unsaid but felt heavy with meaning. I watched the way her fingers toyed absent-mindedly with the delicate silver bracelet on her wrist, her nails catching the light just so, as if trying to steady a nervous energy she couldn't fully hide. Her eyes found mine briefly, then dropped shyly, like a secret almost revealed. There was a strange beauty in the subtle tension, in the way our proximity made the ordinary feel charged, the soft clink of porcelain, the faint hum of conversation around us, the warmth radiating from her as she leaned in just slightly, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of her perfume mingled with the crisp air. Every so often, our hands would nearly brush, a touch avoided, a connection almost made. It was a silent conversation, this delicate interplay of closeness and restraint. I sensed she was waiting for a moment or a sign that would make the leap less daunting. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the table, the world outside seemed to slow in rhythm with the slow beating of our hearts. I realized that what we were building wasn't rushed passion or fleeting excitement. It was something steadier, deeper, a connection grounded in patience, in knowing that some things worth having are worth waiting for. Walking away that evening, I felt a quiet thrill mixed with the ache of uncertainty. Her presence lingered with me, the warmth of her smile and the softness in her eyes a gentle promise of what might come. And beneath it all, a tender hope that this time, the waiting would end differently. The soft glow of the evening wrapped around us like a comforting blanket as we found ourselves sitting together on an old, weathered bench in the quiet park. The world had hushed, the distant chatter of the city dimmed, and the gentle rustle of leaves became the only soundtrack to our shared silence. She looked at me with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken stories, inviting but guarded. After a few moments, she spoke, her voice low and tentative, like the fragile threads of a story finally being pulled free. "There's something I've never told you," she began, her fingers tracing small circles on the fabric of her coat. The vulnerability in her tone was unmistakable, and I leaned in, eager to listen, to understand the hidden chapters she was willing to share. She told me about the years that had passed, years filled with quiet longing, missed chances, and moments when she watched from afar, hoping life might give us a different path. Her words were carefully chosen, each sentence carrying the weight of memories both painful and sweet. I could see the lines on her face soften as she spoke, a tender reminder that every experience had shaped the woman sitting before me. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a deep, aching hope. The age gap between us wasn't a barrier but a silent thread weaving our stories together, her wisdom balanced by my youthful hope. It wasn't a difference to be overcome, but a bridge to be crossed gently, with respect and understanding. As she shared, I reached out, my hand finding hers in the cool evening air. The touch was light but grounding, a silent promise that I was here, present for her, willing to carry the weight of her truths. I felt the warmth of her skin, the slight tremble beneath my fingertips, and the steady beat of her heart through the delicate pulse in her wrist. Her eyes glistened in the fading light, reflecting a mix of relief and fear. Relief in finally sharing her story, fear of what this vulnerability might mean. I brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, letting my fingers linger just long enough to convey the quiet comfort she needed. "I never stopped hoping," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Even when it felt impossible, I believed this moment could come." I wanted to tell her that hope was a powerful thing, that it could light the darkest corners and guide us forward. But words felt inadequate. Instead, I squeezed her hand gently, letting the silence between us speak volumes. In that quiet, fragile space, I realized this was more than a story. It was an invitation to something real, something tender and enduring. The years she had waited weren't lost time, but the foundation of something that could grow slowly, beautifully. The cool breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and I felt the steady warmth of her hand in mine, a tether between two souls navigating the delicate balance of past and present. For the first time, the distance between us seemed less like a chasm and more like a path, one we could walk together, step by careful step. And we found ourselves sitting side by side on the old wooden bench beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak tree. The evening had deepened, folding the world into shadows and soft moonlight that shimmered through the leaves, casting gentle patterns across her face. There was no rush to speak, no need to fill the space between us with words. The silence itself hummed with meaning. She shifted slightly, the warmth of her body just inches from mine. The faint scent of lavender drifted from her hair, wrapping around me like a quiet invitation. Her hand brushed against mine as she tucked a loose strand behind her ear, a movement so delicate it could have been mistaken for chance. But I felt it keenly, a small spark, a silent message sent through the language of touch. Her eyes met mine briefly, holding mine for a heartbeat longer than expected before fluttering down to the worn wood beneath us. That flicker in her gaze told a story of hesitation, of hopes tempered by fear, of desires carefully tucked away. In that moment, I realized how much was left unspoken between us, the longings, the doubts, the secret wishes that hung in the air like a fragile thread. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap with a gentle touch, but something held me back. It wasn't just caution, it was respect for the delicate balance we were navigating, the slow unfolding of trust and connection. Instead, I let my hand rest lightly on my knee, feeling the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat, steady but alive with tension. The world around us seemed to fade away. The soft chirping of crickets, the distant hum of the city, all became background to the quiet symphony of moments shared in silence. Her breath was slow and even, but I noticed the slight catch when our shoulders brushed, the small shiver that traveled through me as our proximity deepened. She shifted again, this time closer, her leg gently touching mine. The contact was electric yet tender, an unspoken question hovering between us. I caught the subtle tremble of her fingers as they rested just above mine, not quite daring to close the space. Her eyes searched mine again, as if asking permission to cross the invisible line we'd been circling for so long. I nodded just slightly, a silent encouragement, and she gave the faintest smile, a fragile, hopeful curve of her lips that made my chest tighten with emotion. The silence stretched on, but it was no longer empty. It was full of promise, of things that might be said when the time was right, of feelings waiting to be named. In that quiet moment, we shared a connection deeper than words, a delicate dance of closeness and restraint. As the night air cooled around us, I could feel the warmth radiating from her, a steady, grounding presence that made the unknown seem less daunting. We sat there, side by side, caught between hesitation and hope, two souls quietly confessing the desire to be closer. Even if the words were still too fragile to speak, the air between us had been taut for so long that when the moment finally arrived, it felt like the world itself held its breath. We were sitting close, too close to be merely friends, but still carefully respectful of the fragile space that had grown between us. Her eyes searched mine with a vulnerability that both terrified and drew me in. She reached out first, her fingers brushing lightly against my shoulder, a touch so soft it felt like a whisper on my skin. It was deliberate but gentle, like the first note of a song that had been waiting years to be played. I felt the warmth of her hand spread through me, grounding me in the moment, steadying the whirlwind of thoughts and feelings swirling inside. Then her hand moved, slowly, almost hesitantly, until her fingertips rested on my cheek. The skin there was soft and warm under her touch, and for a heartbeat, the noise of the world faded completely. I could feel the subtle pulse beneath her fingers, the quiet rhythm of her heartbeat mingling with my own. Her voice was barely more than a breath as she whispered the words I had waited so long to hear. "I've been waiting years for this moment with you." Those words settled between us, heavy with meaning and unspoken promises. They broke down the walls we'd carefully built, walls formed of hesitation, fear, and the silent question of whether this connection could really be ours. I reached up to cradle her hand against my cheek, my thumb brushing over her knuckles in a tender rhythm. My heart pounded, not with impatience, but with the steady, comforting certainty that we were finally here, together. Our eyes locked, and in that gaze, I saw everything. The years of waiting, the quiet hope, the vulnerability laid bare. She smiled, a soft, genuine curve that made the ache inside me ease, replaced by a warmth that spread through my chest. Without thinking, I closed the small distance between us, letting my forehead rest lightly against hers. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it spoke volumes, a silent confession of how deeply I felt, how much I had wanted this moment too. Her breath mingled with mine, slow and steady, and I felt the faint tremble in her body as she leaned into me, trusting, opening up. The warmth of her presence enveloped me, a gentle embrace without the need for words. The world outside our little bubble continued on, but we existed in a suspended moment, where time slowed and only the language of touch and silent understanding mattered. That first tender contact wasn't just a gesture, it was a promise, a beginning. As her fingers curled around mine, I realized that this connection, this slow-burning, patient love, was something rare and beautiful. It wasn't rushed or loud. It was quiet, steady, and deeply real. And in her eyes, I saw the reflection of a future we both dared to hope for, one built on years of waiting, honesty, and the kind of love that grows stronger with time. The room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of a single lamp casting warm pools of light across the worn wooden floor. We sat close, but not touching, the space between us filled with an uneasy mixture of hope and hesitation. Now that the tender moments had unfolded, the questions, so long buried beneath years of waiting, began to surface. She looked at me, her eyes searching, vulnerable yet resolute. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly, voice barely above a whisper. "Not of us, but of everything else. The world outside, what people might say. The gap between us, it's not just years. It's expectations, judgments. Sometimes I wonder if we can really make this work." Her words hung heavy in the air, raw and honest. I reached out, my fingers gently tracing the curve of her hand, letting her feel the steady beat of my own courage. "I think about that too," I confessed. "But it's not just about what others see. It's about us, our fears, our doubts. I don't want to lose what we're building because of what might be." There was a long pause, filled only by the quiet rhythm of our breathing. In that stillness, I saw her shoulders relax slightly, the tension easing as she leaned closer, seeking comfort in the shared vulnerability. The age gap, which once felt like a chasm, now seemed more like a challenge we faced side by side. She spoke again, softer this time. "I've lived through a lot. There's wisdom in that, but also scars. Sometimes I wonder if I'm asking too much, if I'm asking you to carry more than you should." Her fingers curled around mine, a fragile yet fierce grip that spoke of both fear and fierce hope. I shook my head gently. "You don't have to carry it all alone. We'll figure it out, together. The age difference, the whispers, they don't define us. What matters is the honesty between us, the respect, the care." My thumb brushed soothing circles on the back of her hand, the touch slow and steady, grounding us both. We talked long into the night, unraveling doubts and fears that had taken root over time. Every confession was met with understanding, every hesitation met with reassurance. We didn't pretend the path ahead would be easy, but in our honesty, we found strength. Throughout the conversation, small touches punctuated our words, her hand resting on my knee, my fingers tracing her wrist, the gentle squeeze of a palm conveying support when words faltered. These moments of physical affection, tender and respectful, deepened the emotional intimacy between us. As dawn approached, the heaviness in the room softened into a quiet warmth. We sat wrapped in a cocoon of newfound trust, no longer afraid to face the unknown because we faced it together. The challenges outside might be many, but inside this space, our connection was real and unwavering. In that fragile, honest hour, I realized that love wasn't just passion or desire. It was patience, courage, and the willingness to hold each other through the doubts and fears, slowly, gently, without rush. And in her eyes, I saw not just a woman who had waited years, but a partner ready to walk the future by my side, step by step. The evening air was cool but gentle, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the garden nearby. We sat together on the old porch swing, the wooden boards creaking softly beneath us as it swayed in slow, easy arcs. The world beyond the porch faded into a soft blur, the worries, the doubts, the waiting, all melting away in the warmth of this moment. She nestled closer, her head resting lightly against my shoulder. The softness of her hair brushed against my cheek, and I could feel the steady, calm rhythm of her breath mingling with mine. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining with a familiar ease, a silent affirmation that this was where we belonged. "I never thought this moment would come," she murmured, her voice a gentle whisper that seemed meant just for me. "I've waited a lifetime for this." Her words hung in the air, tender and true. It wasn't a grand declaration, but it carried all the weight of years filled with quiet hope, patient longing, and the courage to keep believing. I turned my head slowly, catching her gaze in the dim light, eyes bright with warmth, vulnerability, and a quiet joy that made my heart swell. There was something profoundly beautiful about the way she carried herself, a grace born not just from age, but from the life she had lived, the love she had dared to hold onto despite the odds. And here we were, two souls who had navigated the uncertain paths of time and doubt to find each other. The swing moved gently beneath us as we sat in comfortable silence, the night wrapped around like a soft shawl. I brushed my thumb across the back of her hand, feeling the softness of her skin and the steady pulse beneath. Every touch was a quiet promise of patience, of respect, of a love that would grow slowly but surely. "I'm here," I said softly, my voice steady and full of meaning. "For all the years ahead." She smiled then, a smile that was both radiant and serene, the kind that comes when you know you've found something rare and true. Her fingers traced lazy circles on my palm, grounding me in the moment, reminding me that love like this isn't about grand gestures or loud declarations. It's about the quiet certainty of presence. As the stars blinked awake in the velvet sky above, we leaned into each other, sharing a slow dance to the rhythm of our own hearts. No music played, only the symphony of our breaths and the gentle creak of the swing. Time seemed to pause, letting us savor the delicate beauty of a love that had waited patiently, then blossomed fully, quietly. This was not just an ending, but a beginning, the start of a shared journey where age, past fears, and uncertainty no longer held power. What mattered was the here and now, the warmth of her hand in mine, the softness of her cheek against mine, and the unspoken vow that whatever came next, we would face it together. In that peaceful moment, with the world hushed around us, I finally understood what she meant when she said she had been waiting years. Because some loves are worth every second of waiting.